Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I want to introduce everyone to Toni Santos. Just a little bit about her before I let her kind of introduce herself and talk about where she is. And this is her words, so it'll just be her words coming out of my mouth. Toni says, "Whether it be in my office or in the hallways, my scholars know that I will bring my joy, enthusiasm, and understanding to them after receiving my master's in higher education from Syracuse University in 2019. I have worked hard to find opportunities within higher education that will allow students of color to reach their full potential." So, Toni, tell us where you are now. Thank you so much for doing this, by the way.
Of course, of course. So as of right now, I am a summer programs manager at Achievement First, which is a charter school network based in, I believe, Connecticut, New York, and Rhode Island. So that is what I do right now. I help students find opportunities that will make them more competitive when it comes time to start applying to colleges.
That's awesome, and right in line with everything that I know and love. I'm super passionate about education, which is why I've been involved with SBI for the last 24 years.
Mhm.
I really feel like education is the answer to so many of our challenges. Going through what we're going through right now. If a few more folks were a little bit more educated, we might not be dealing with some of the issues that we're dealing with, right?
Well, right.
So along those lines, what is the big message that you would like people to take away from your interview today?
So the message that I would want people to take away is to not compare your journey to others, because comparison is the thief of joy. What works for one person may not work for you. And also, I would say that it's okay to be a nice person, because oftentimes it's not always what you know, it's who you know and who's willing to advocate for you when your voice isn't being heard. So that's what I would say.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. All right, so let's get into this. How did you find out about Randolph? So where were you living at the time, and what junior high were you going to before you found out about Randolph?
Okay, so I'm gonna give you the whole spiel.
All right.
So I was born and raised in Harlem. I'm actually living in the same house that I grew up in.
Oh, very cool.
So it just so happened that I was attending, I lived more so uptown because we moved for a little bit to let the new place get renovated. And we came back, and a few months later, I was starting high school. So I went to Frederick Douglass Academy too, which is on 114th Street between 7th and 8th Avenue in Harlem. And I guess I just made a choice that, hey, I'm going to Randolph. It just worked out perfectly. And it was also in Harlem. So I know that my parents wanted me to stay very, very close to home. They weren't comfortable with me traveling to other boroughs. And neither was I at the moment, because I just believed that my school should be close to where I live just in case of emergencies or if I had to rush home. So all of my schools growing up were relatively close to where I lived. It just so happened as I got older, I was able to branch out a little bit more.
No, I love that aspect of the story, because we've definitely had so many folks that are like, from Bronx and Brooklyn and Queens. So, it's something special about Randolph, where you do have students coming from all over the place. There's local folks like yourself, and then you got, you're in school with somebody that literally took a train 2 hours to get there, which is
that's dedication. Look,
I'm much more on your tip. I'd much rather be closer to where I go. I commute down the stairs, and that's rough sometimes. So when I was driving 40 minutes to work, in the last, I started my business 9 years ago, and one of the reasons definitely on the list for starting my own business was like, I don't want to drive to work anymore. I want to avoid.
I hear you.
So, all right. So you stayed local. Randolph was that choice. So what was your first impressions, walking into the castle that is Randolph? What was some things that you enjoyed freshman year? What sort of surprised you?
Oh my gosh. So, okay. Oh, I'm so embarrassed because I don't think a lot of people know the story. So I ended up getting accepted into another high school. So Randolph, I didn't start on the first day. So I ended up actually starting out at a school that my mother worked at, because she's a school safety agent. Okay. So I ended up going to the school that she worked at. then I realized I don't like this school. It wasn't a lot of Black people. I
Oh,
felt
wow.
really outcasted.
Do you remember the school?
I remember the location. I don't remember the name of the school, but it was very heavily on the Dominican side.
Okay.
And I remember very much so sticking out, which was not a thing that I was used to.
Well, and Randolph has a lot of Dominicans in it, so I can't imagine how much more you feel like that.
It was like 90% Dominican.
Wow. Okay.
And like, very heavily on the Dominican, and I know it was Dominicans. Versus Randolph, I felt it was equally balanced. So I believe on the first week after school started, my mom said, "You're going to Randolph." And that was completely fine with me. And I remember walking in, it was me and my mom, to the first floor office next to the security desk. And I remember saying to my mom, like, no, like, Mom, I'm so scared to come here because I heard such like strong stories about how the toughest kids go to Randolph. And like someone told me that I was gonna get robbed for my sneakers when I walked in. So I was so scared. My mom had to come with me. And I remember her being in the office next to me on the couch. And I remember it was two girls who were going to be in my class. I didn't know they were going to be my classmates, but they were there. And my mom said, "No one's going to touch you. I promise. No one's going to touch you." Like, oh my God. And like the whole.
She had the school safety officer thing going on.
She was like, no one's going to touch you. I'll get the senator in here. And I was just like, and that's when I started my classes after my mom basically scared the whole office.
That's me seeing in front of these folks that you were going to class with. So what happened after that? Did you start adjusting, or were you living in fear of getting your sneakers stolen?
Actually, I didn't have nice sneakers. So I don't know what the fuck. They were like hand-me-down sneakers. So I don't know who in their right mind was gonna think to rob me. Think about it, but I ended up just making friends within my class and following people to lunch, and naturally you find your crowd, you find what works for you. And I ended up sitting with the same people over and over. I even met a girl who lived across the street from me.
Oh, that's awesome.
So we would commute together, and her friends, I sat with her friends at lunch, and then a whole new group of people came in. And so I just had a couple
how long was your commute door to door for the school?
I would say 30 minutes.
Oh, okay.
And I was waiting for the bus, so not the train.
Right. Okay.
And walking up the steps.
Oh, you did have to walk up the steps.
I don't think a lot of people mention the steps.
Oh, a lot of people. Everybody mentions the steps. people don't forget the steps. It's amazing when you think about it, because Thompson's been doing that in that building for, I don't know, close to 30 years now, and he's been going up those steps. And then his apartment building in the city on 14th Street, he's at the top of a fifth floor walk up.
Oh, never in my life.
So his groceries go up five sets of floors of steps, as well as him walking up the steps on 135th Street every time he goes to the school.
I've seen so much coming down and going up those steps.
That's why he's so skinny.
So many arguments, so many tears, so much.
I think this is right too. This is a little bit of trivia, but there's exactly 135 steps on 135th Street.
Well, look at that. And,
yeah.
All right.
So what you got in, freshman year, sophomore year? Tell us about the journey. Were you getting exposed to? When did you get exposed to SBI? Because I think you started pretty early on in SBI.
So I started my sophomore year.
Okay.
I went to the shows that students would participate in. I didn't just really thought it was a group of talented students that had a group and they just danced. And I remember looking at the people on the stage, and I remember thinking, that's never going to be me. I don't know how you could get on stage and be so brave, like never in my life. But I was dancing at my church at the time, like a year before high school. So I didn't know what my stage fright was about, but I just always thought it could never be me to dance in front of people my age and to, be that vulnerable, but yet courageous.
Right.
And I remember coming back my sophomore year, I wanted to do things a lot different. And I didn't want to be in the background and, just not be seen and not be heard. I think I had a lot of things to show, and I was a funny person, so I wanted to meet more people. And what better way to meet people than by doing something that I loved, which was dancing.
I love that. Yeah. So how did you get exposed to urban? Who talked you into joining urban?
So I was in a class with Natasha Pierre, who was who was a dancer in urban.
Right.
And I remember talking to my best friend, and I said, well, if you audition, I'll audition.
Who's your best friend?
Naima.
Oh, Naima. Okay. Yep.
I remember saying to her, if you audition, I'll audition. And she was going to audition. So I said, I'm right behind you. And we did. And I remember Thompson telling us that, you're not only a part of a dance group, there's more things that come with this than just you performing.
Right.
Which, it's a college preparatory program. And I'm like, college prep? Man, I'm just here to dance. But now that I look back on it, it was extremely important that it was a really great idea that he innovated, all that together. You can't take one without the other. And I think that's a really great move that he made.
Yeah, that's the model of SBI, which I think, we're still working on, getting it to a place where we can bring it to other schools. But I think it works whether you're talking about the baseball team or the basketball team or, the whatever, having that positive peer pressure, because I don't know if this is your memory of it, and sort of cool to ask the question to see what your experience of it was. But hopefully, and what we're going for is you get that positive peer pressure of, the folks that are on the team, like, hey, you got to make sure your grades are a certain place. Hey, you gotta make sure you're participating in this college workshop because we're all going and you got to go too. And that sort of thing, the positive peer pressure there that we try to create and foster in that.
Yeah, that was, it was what do they call it? A 2-for-1 kind of deal.
Mm-hmm.
Dance, you also got to do the business workshops and the college workshops, which was good. I actually pretty much enjoyed myself. I went on the college trips. I did the interview days. It was a journey, but it definitely brought me out of my shell and taught me how to talk to different people.
Which college workshops did you go on?
Which college trips?
Yeah, which ones did you go on the college workshops?
I believe there was one at Union.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was like a tour of a few schools, right?
Yes, I went to, oh my God, what is it called? It was a school in Vermont, St. Michael's?
Yep.
St. Michael's? Yes, I went there. I also remember I went to Gettysburg.
Yep, Gettysburg is always a big one for us, yeah.
I love me some Gettysburg. I can't... trying to put emphasis somewhere else, but I don't really remember. I remember.
Okay, there's no test requirement here. There's no grading.
Okay, great, because I was gonna fail.
Do you remember the lessons that we were teaching on those college workshops, like what we were asking you to do?
Keep up. I remember it was a lot of keep up and try to put off your phone as much as possible. I didn't really know the importance of having to stay off my phone back then, but now that I do, I know now that when your face is in your phone screen, you miss out on what's happening around you. So I remember constantly, being told, like as a group, put your phones away, listen up, and ask a lot of questions.
Yeah.
And
you just gave me shivers up my spine. I can walk away from this interview feeling like mission complete now. I mean, that's sort of the point we had. Just making sure that students were really engaged in the experience. Definitely different from like going to a college and just following the tour around and okay, look at the cafeteria. That building's pretty. Well, look at that pretty thing.
Yeah.
Really engaging and asking the students.
Remembering to disperse when you ate lunch, to give yourself an opportunity to become adaptable to the environment and to the people around. Because when you surround yourself with the same people in different spaces, you tend to miss out again on what's happening. Same with like your phone. You're accustomed to just always going for your phone. So I remember Thompson always being like, if you're in the caf or if you're eating, eat with different people.
Yeah.
Well,
So ask the questions, find out what their experiences were like, get
mhm.
an understanding of the resources that are actually available on campus. And it's sort of interesting because a lot of folks that may not have learned those lessons, they had some challenges. You mentioned Trevor. I think Trevor, he's a really intelligent guy, but he's a little hard headed. So, he was talking about in his story, going through the experience of just not having maybe asked some of the questions that he should have asked, and it made his journey a
Yeah.
little bit more difficult. So hopefully we've eased the process for some people. You can't get through to everybody, but at least hopefully we made it a little bit easier. That's the goal anyways, to give people more opportunity. So that's cool that you had that experience. So talk to me about the rest of the experience at Randolph, junior year, senior year.
Junior year was when I did Gettysburg. And I opened up myself a lot more. I think I started to become the person that I wanted to be. I wanted to be more outgoing. I wanted to talk again to more people. I wanted to be presented with newer opportunities. And my senior year was when college application process time started. And I had to take everything that I learned the past 2 years and put it into what was going to happen now. And looking back on it, I wish I would have asked for more help, and I wish there would have been more assistance offered. Because while I did have some insight on how to go about it, oh my God, I'm so sorry. That's my neighborhood.
No worries. Live television.
While I did have some resources, I don't feel like I had all of the support I needed to be successful in my college search and my college application process and enrollment process. I felt like I did a lot of that on my own. So being first generation Afro-Latina, trying to navigate the higher education world while still being a student, a high school student, was extremely difficult when I also felt like my parents didn't know much.
Yeah. What do you think? I mean, in terms of the help that you needed, what was the help that you needed that you weren't getting?
Oh, definitely for the FAFSA.
Okay.
I wish someone would have sat down with me and would have went over the ins and outs of what I was signing and what I was agreeing to. So with the FAFSA, I know it might sound, or seem pretty explanatory, but it's really not.
Oh, no, listen, one of the values or things that I really appreciate about doing these interviews is, we get to go back and sort of have a, 2020 vision on what could have been better, which is really important because the students that are going through it now, I mean, can you imagine being a senior right now? It's got to be incredibly challenging. If we could go back or if we could go forward and see, what those students needed right in this moment. But I think things like that, working through the FAFSA, working through the financial aid, understanding things like you say it, to students, but you don't know which student is actually hearing the message, and who's lost in the phone or lost in a personal tragedy. Can you imagine folks that, families are suffering, through COVID, whether people are recovering or not, it creates a crazy challenge. Go back to 2013 and just regular teenage life. I mean, the reason I'm so passionate and involved with this program is I was lost as a high school student. So, I didn't have some of the support coming from a single parent home. There was things that I didn't know and nobody was pushing me on. And that's not an excuse. And, I didn't do what I needed to do, obviously, to graduate the right way. But understanding that and being able to look back and say, man, I could have used a little bit more pushing on this. I wish I would have been a little bit more self-directed on that. Really important. Yeah. So talk to that. So what schools did you apply to and what was the experience?
I applied to a few CUNYs. I remember I applied to, I believe it was City College, and I applied to Moyne, Allegheny, Casanova, OCC for whatever reason. I don't know. Gettysburg, St. Michael's. I applied to a few, schools up there in the name. St. Rose, the College of St. Rose.
Yep.
I applied to that. So those are the few that I can remember off the top of my head. It was
and with the acceptances and what the financial aid packages, what did that end up looking like?
I also applied to Howard. Sorry.
Oh, very cool. Yeah.
And I ended up getting accepted to a few. I got accepted to Allegheny, Moyne, Howard, College of St. Rose, and Cazenovia. I got waitlisted for Gettysburg, which was like my number one choice at the time. And the financial aid did not look good. Oh, my sweet Lord. I remember looking at my financial aid letter and thinking, why do these people think that my parents are billionaires? Because we're not. We're
going back to the FAFSA, right?
We're not making that much. We're not making that much money to have all of this.
What family did you have at home? Mom, dad, siblings?
Mom and dad are married.
Okay.
So they filed joint. And I felt like, do they not know that my dad is like retired? And my mom is a school safety agent. We don't make that much. Not for the amount of family that we had and we were taken care of too. And I think that's where the marginalized middle income family has those consequences.
Yeah, we always go through this. We always go through this because it's hard. It's really hard when, and again, knowing the right way, what to fill in on the FAFSA, what to not leave out. I mean, this goes to like a lot of conversations. You're in the workplace, because I've definitely been in this situation with the IRS and with the state agencies, owning my own business. You have to answer questions to the state all the time, and those answers affect you. There's consequences on that. But that explanation of like, if you qualify as what they would call, what do you call it? Zero. You know what I'm talking about. If you're once you file the FAFSA, if you qualify as being not able to really contribute financially to your education. The thing is, and I've met so many students that were so angry, like, oh, this person has worse grades than me, and they got into a HEOP program, and they're getting basically a full ride. Meanwhile, I got to pay loans. But it's the difference and the reason those programs exist. And within the Black community and within communities of color, but just whether it's poor white people or whatnot, because I was in the college that I eventually got my GED, and then I went to college down in New School in the city, and I found out 2 years into my time at the New School, Eugene Lane College, that I probably could have applied and gotten into the higher education opportunity program there, but because I was a white guy and people just didn't assume that I needed anything, nobody told me, so I was like, hello, like, could somebody have like helped me and put me down the right path? I still owe money for my 2 years of college education without a degree,
Lord.
20 years later, so it's like, there's so much stuff that, and this, again, why I believe in what we do in terms of giving education. But for folks that don't have the lights on at home, they're dealing with, a level of poverty that we just don't necessarily understand, because unless you've been there, you just don't understand like Section 8 housing and all that kind of stuff that goes with it. That's what those programs are intended to do, to lift somebody out of extreme poverty. And yes, I think everybody's heard of a story where somebody's mother and father weren't married. They didn't count the income, so they got the
yes.
but, understand that, coming from a broken home has its own, and I know there's like obviously exceptions to that whole rule, but, the intention of the program is good. And most of the time, for the majority of folks that it benefits, I think, you just have to understand like that benefits them because it's supposed to benefit them. And for the rest of us, we have to be a little bit more diligent in finding our opportunities because maybe we haven't had it so bad. All that to say, life ain't fair. you got to make, you get lemons, you got to make lemonade. No question about it. So you're dealing with all this stuff. How did you end up at Moyne? What was the final factors that influenced that decision?
Believe it or not, they gave the best financial aid. For financial aid that wasn't that good, they gave the best one. And I was determined to not have to go to a community college because I wanted to get away from my family. I'm going to be completely honest and transparent. I wanted to get away from my family. I didn't feel like I would be the person that I wanted to become if I stayed home, because I knew I would always have my family on my back. I would never get privacy. I would never know how it truly felt to be an adult if my parents were always dialing back. And that just could not happen. I wanted that 4-year experience. So I was willing to take out the loans. I wish now I can go back in time and like give myself like a quick 2 slap and just say, hey, do the 2 years and then do the 2 years somewhere else. I wish I would have done that, but shoulda, woulda, couldas exist in the world all the time, and I can't go back.
Well, it's tough. It's tough to do that transition. People talk about doing that transition, and there's people obviously that do that transition, but the grades, the finding the right school combination that accepts the transfer of credits, it's a logistical challenge, and well, I think we all want to save the money. I mean, I could easily see things working out differently. How was so you ended up at Moyne? How was senior year and then the transition to Moyne?
It was awkward because I know my mom didn't want me to go. I know she was very much so upset when she found out I had accepted.
What's the cultural background for you guys?
So I'm Honduran and Belizean. My mom is Belizean and my dad's Honduran, hence the last name Santos.
And I know you said you were first generation, right? You were the first one to go away to college?
Yeah, I was the first one to go away to college. And I was accepted into Moyne's HEOP AHANA program. So HEOP is everything you just explained. You get the academic help and the financial assistance. AHANA is like a partner with HEOP, but you don't get the financial assistance. You just get the academic help. Academic help.
Okay.
That's it. So I was
well, I guess something's better than nothing.
Right. I mean, if you gotta take something, if you could give me a crumb, I'll take it if I'm starving. I ended up having to do that one. So while some of the friends I made were like, my parents don't pay anything. This is a free ride. I'm just like, wow, must be nice. I wouldn't know the feeling, but you make it work. I took out the loans. I took out those loans and I made those choices. And
how much were the loans per year?
How much can I say? I think I want to go with about like 8,000.
Okay. That's not horrible. We suggest, I think, about the maximum you try to get around like 7,000 max per year. So 8,000, I've seen, I've heard a lot worse.
9,000, and then my dad had to take out a $5,000 parent plus loan.
Okay, so that's so this is the thing, and this is sort of the interesting thing, even when people talk about the full ride, because sometimes you get the full ride, but the full ride really isn't a full ride because you got to pay for housing or you got to pay for the food plan, that kind of stuff, and then all this stuff adds up. So the original 7,000 isn't 7,000; it's like 11,000.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like that. So my dad had to take a $5,000 loan out for 1 year. And I just never heard the end of that because, unfortunately, financial literacy is not something that is taught or expressed in low income neighborhoods. So my dad was thinking, what happens to my credit? What happens if I can't pay it back? Are they going to throw me in jail? I'm going to go to jail because I can't pay back a loan. And I said, God is my witness. I will never allow you to go to jail for, trying to properly finance my higher education. It's just not going to happen. So he ended up having to take out that for just 1 year. And then I made my transition to my pre-summer program before college. And it was quite different from what I thought it would be like. It wasn't what I expected, but it was helpful. I don't think it did a proper job of preparing me for the rest of my 4 years there.
How so?
I I think people walk the walk, but when it's time to talk the talk, a lot of hands are in the pot, but not stirring. If you know what, if that makes sense.
Let me see if I can explain it, and then you can tell me if I got it right. So you got a lot of people that are invested because they got a paycheck from the school in helping and guiding and coaching, but then when you're in school, you don't feel like the support is there.
Yes. I feel like everyone wants to be involved or is pulled to be involved, but no one really has the right answers. Especially when it came time for those controversial topics, people doing blackface on campus, like, let's hold a summit. And it's just like, hold the heck up. Hold up. Yeah, I can't be that, but you can't be that oblivious.
Well, you just mentioned, we were talking about Gettysburg College. So you remember Daryl Jones?
Daryl Jones.
So Daryl Jones is the big black man.
Yes, I remember him. Him.
I didn't get very far in my explanation, but
I do.
He's a very, very, very well-spoken man. And, so with everything going on right now with the civil unrest in the wake of George Floyd, and, let's not go through the list of names just this year and then, on back, anyways. So a white teacher was asking him online, hey Daryl, can you teach a course on this? Now, Daryl Jones is kind of high up. He's part of the admissions. He does recruitment for the school, period. Not just diversity recruitment, but recruitment for the school, period. Right. Yeah. So it was just interesting. First of all, Daryl's response to that was a hard no. But it's just the idea that if you're the person of color in the room, that you have some responsibility to address and be a part of the solution when white folks act a fool, when people are being really just socially, culturally unaware. And I saw it when I was in college. It's not anything new. It wasn't new for the folks that were, older than I was, and it's not new for the folks that are younger than I am, where if you have one black woman in the classroom, now you are the spokeswoman for the entire black race, whether it's African, black, West Indian, black. You're it. You are the representative for all culture now. Toni, spokesperson for the culture. Can we get your take on this? Right.
Oftentimes, like during my first year, when the topic of slavery would come up, and Moyne is very white, as
most higher institutions.
Oh, definitely. Definitely. Very white. And when the topic of slavery would come up, everyone would look at me or like the other black people, and I'd look back like, I want to know too.
Is there a slave behind me? Yeah.
It's like, well, you want to know? I want to know. I wasn't there. I was never a slave. My ancestors just possibly happened to be some. So I think a lot of people want to hear those stories, but actually don't. But if you don't look back, you look pretty bad. And at the moment, I feel pretty bad for not speaking up a lot because I didn't have the knowledge nor the resources to speak up. I just knew that I was black and I wanted to be treated like a normal person. Well, I knew that I looked different, but I just wanted to fit in also. I didn't want to always feel like when I walked in the room, I had to make a point.
Well, it's mentally draining to have to be on stage to talk about issues that really the educators at an institution really need to make more effort to make sure that they're the educators. They're supposed to be the folks knowledgeable in the room. So if you're teaching history and slavery comes up, they should be informed on the topic and be able to address it. There's certainly thousands of white educators that do address racism, that have informed themselves on racism, and it is the white racial institutions that are oppressing folks. So you would hope that the folks that are supposedly, I mean, there's sense, we're kind of getting off the topic. I want to focus back on you, but we're in sort of the moment right now, so that's why I'm taking the time to address it. But just the understanding that, if you're white and you don't understand that most institutions in the United States carry a racially instituted past, then you're naive and you need to educate yourself. And for the folks that are educated, it's our responsibility to speak up and not, and I find myself doing it as well. I have a platform, I have a daily business show. And so the first thought in my mind is, let me call a black person that has more history and can speak knowledgeably about this. And I'll use my, what about educating myself and being more informed about the names and the incidents and the history? So, you want to, it's a hard place to be, but it's nothing compared to having to deal with, in terms of my white privilege, being able to, drive down the road and I'm not worried about being stopped by the police and being killed. Where, not everyone can say that. So, there's levels of hard, and, white educators need to, toughen up, get to it and get on their job. So anyways, let's focus on you. So you're dealing with that kind of stuff. You went through the summer program. What was the first semester, first year of classes like, and how did you transition?
It was hard. It was very hard. There was no one on my back. I remember, progress reports being given to my mom and my dad, and me feeling like so nervous. I'm so sorry about that right now. Can someone please get their phone? Someone get their phone? Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate you.
Hi, Dad. You good? You good? That's the fastest I ever seen him walk.
We appreciate you, Dad, for taking care of those college bills. We appreciate it. You can let that phone ring. It's all right.
So, I remember not feeling as confident, but I was very, very blessed to have a network of people that were there to support me because I was a part of the Ethiopia HANA program. And you just learn to roll with the times. It's either, you get in line or you fall behind. And that just was not an option, especially with me taking out the loans and me promising my family that I wasn't going to be a disappointment, that I wasn't going to have spent all this money and my parents' money for me to come back with no degree. That was not the option. I just rather not come back home then, because it's not possible for me to do all this schooling and have gone through all this work and sacrifice for me not to excel my first semester.
Okay. And did you get value, or did you feel like you were learning things?
I felt like I was learning things. I felt like I was learning more about myself than I was about the content I was learning about.
Right.
And I was learning how to speak up for myself. I was learning how to advocate and how to properly advocate. I was learning how to not get so comfortable not saying anything because I didn't want to step on anyone's toes, but instead acknowledging that my toes felt like they were being stepped on. And either I can stand here and allow people to continue to step on them, or I can move my foot and make some action.
Yeah.
And that's what I was also learning about at the same time, on top of trying to navigate those relationships that I also had in high school. So making new friends, but also keeping old friends. It was extremely hard.
Oh, that's awesome. No, and that's what college is really all about, discovering yourself. So I'm glad you were getting that experience. So keep us moving through this. So what was going on in between your college years? Were you doing internships or anything in the summers? And what did your sophomore and junior year look like?
So for the first 2 summers in college, I was a camp counselor or camp facilitator for second grade students at a elementary school in the Heights. So I came back to New York City over the summer and I was working. I was making me a little bit of change, and I didn't like it. I felt that, of course, I was making a quick buck, but it was more so like summer school for students. So I was having to track students reading and, helping out with lesson plans. And it wasn't so much the camp that I thought it would be. but also acknowledging that I don't think the school that I was working at was doing a good job of preparing those second grade students for third grade. There were students in there that were on a kindergarten reading level. I don't understand how that's okay. And we're not, getting that information beforehand.
Wow.
And while I was in college, my first 2 years, I was working at the CAF in the in the career advising office. So I was doing two things.
That's awesome. So what was that experience like?
I did not like the CAF. I'm going to be quite honest. Me cleaning up my space is one thing, and that's a little hard at times, but me having to clean up after my classmates, my white counterparts, who will leave their dishes on the table and just walk away. And it's my job to clean tables. And I would have to take up their dishes knowing that they could have walked to the conveyor belt and put it on. That didn't work for me. So I made sure I did not clean tables again. That was my first 2 years doing that. And I never went back. I never turned back, no matter how easy the money was, no matter how fast it came. I was not going to feel degraded sitting next to someone in the same class, reading the same book, and I have to clean up after you? Absolutely not. My ancestors would be rolling over in their graves.
And that's, that gets into the monetary privilege. You go into a school and who is the folks that have to do work study? Who's the folks that don't have to do work study going in there? Yeah. So keep us moving through here. So I'm assuming you're talking about sophomore year, and then keep telling us about the experience. Were you involved in campus stuff?
Okay, I'll tell you a little bit more since you asked, Cameron. So I did the longest job I had while in undergrad was at the career advising and the job access office, I believe. College career advising, I believe the name was. And I love that job. It was a student assistant position. And during my last 2 years, I was helping out a lot with the Meet the Accountants event, which was an annual event that all the accountant students had to do in order to pass their classes. And I remember getting so many tasks of you have to contact this person and secure this meeting and do this and set this room up and be there. I had so many shifts. And I just know that I wanted to do more. So on top of me joining dance clubs and being a part of the STEP team, and also, helping out professors where I could, trying to get involved in campus ministry, it was just a couple of things that I did here and there. And ultimately, I ended up having 3 jobs my final year of undergrad. I was a resident advisor. I was, I believe, the phone operator for the college, and I was working at the career advising and development office.
How did you manage all your time? Because that's a lot of work.
I was not doing a good job,
especially with the RA piece. For anyone that doesn't know, resident advisor it's a big commitment. In the dorms, basically being in charge of fellow students. So you go from in your experience, cleaning up after kids in the dorm, and then you're having to enforce panty and underwear off the floor and hallway stuff, I imagine, in addition to crazy regulations and interpersonal problems, and then trying to deal with your own stuff during the course of a day. It's not an easy job. Akosua, you talked about watching Trevor stuff, but Akosua, his wife, in her experience, because she did the RA thing, and that was really challenging and stressful.
I also I did resident advising for 1 year, so my senior year, with first year students, so students who were just coming in, and so many times I had to check students on their privilege. Also because it was me and another Black woman who was a year under me. It was also her first year doing it. And we were looked at as the two meanies of the RA staff. And I think it has a lot to do with the perception of the Black woman. Because honest to God, we were not there that much. We honestly were just like, look, if you don't make no trouble, I'm good. If I don't see it, I don't know about it. I don't care.
Right.
Just be safe. And I felt like when it came time for us specifically to enforce those rules, it was so many pointing fingers and glares and snickers and whispers when we would walk past. And I was just thinking like, oh, I got to go back to the hood. I would rather walk through Brownsville than have to walk past these folks day after day, because people just did not want to check their privilege. You know, me being told I can't write up a student or to take it easy on this student because his dad is a donor. I shouldn't give this student much trouble, and it's just like that student is a crappy student. He's a bad person.
You know, and I said what I said in terms of explaining the position with dealing with like the interpersonal stuff, and that what you just said added a whole nother layer. I can't imagine. I can't imagine dealing with that in my own studies as well.
Let me tell you, small liberal arts white schools, they take them donors so serious. It's ridiculous. And I was not doing a good job of practicing great time management skills. But again, you either fall in line or you fall behind. I managed to keep my grades up. And before you knew it, I was graduating, or I was in the process of graduating, but also trying to do all that and get ready for grad school because I knew I had to go to grad school.
So when did you make that decision that you were definitely going to grad school? And I got to update the stuff here, but you went to Syracuse, right?
Yes, I went to Syracuse University for my master's in higher education. I knew I wanted to go my junior year. I said I wasn't going to graduate and go home and not know what I'm doing with myself. So I started talking to people who came before me, who were a part of APRCHS at Moyne, and what their journeys were like venturing into grad school application process, doing searches online, looking at reviews. And I ended up applying to Nazareth College, SUNY Buffalo State, Syracuse University, and Canisius College.
Why did those schools appeal to you on the master's program?
Syracuse, because a very great woman, her name was Colette Montgomery. She worked at Moyne, and she went there and she loved it. And she was also from Harlem, and she was also a HANA in the Moyne HOP HANA program. So I felt like we related so much, and she loved Syracuse University, and she had an assistantship. She said she liked the program and got her to where she needed to go.
How did you meet her?
How did I meet Colette? She was graduating when I was coming into Moyne.
Okay.
So it was just a side by side.
So you guys connected before she graduated, and you just stayed in touch?
She was on the STEP team. And so when I came in, she came back to visit, and we ended up talking. And she's such good people, such good energy.
And this is why you want to participate in the extracurriculars on a campus, because this is how the connections are made.
Yeah, Colette's great. Love Colette. Love you, Colette. And she was really helpful, as well as my AHANA summer counselor when I was 17 and I went to Moyne. He was really great in helping me, Brandon. Whoop, whoop. And also because those schools didn't offer you didn't have to take the GREs. And I was not taking another test. And that's when I decided to just venture in. And Syracuse University has one of the oldest higher ed programs in the nation. And they had a 100% job finding rate. I don't know if that's the correct word, but after you graduate, like all
job placement.
Yes, job placement. And I knew I needed to be in a program that was as successful as that.
Yeah.
And I ended up getting accepted to all four. And I got an assistantship offer from 2. And I ended up going with Syracuse University because it was in the office that I really wanted to be in, which was the Office of Multicultural Affairs. And
when you say the assistantship, is that with the financial aid, or was that?
They paid me, and the program also covered my.
That's amazing. So with master's school, which is typically very expensive. If you think undergrad's expensive, master's is usually more expensive.
Yeah.
So did you end up actually taking loans for master's school at all?
Yes, but not much. I took like a $5,500 loan for my first year and an $8,000 one for the next one.
Okay. So yeah, in terms of, because I know we were like up at probably like 12 before we got into expenses for undergrad per year. It's a tough thing for folks, right?
Yeah.
Just getting that math down, and for anybody that's a current high school student, understanding the way that math adds up, because it can change from year to year too. The aid isn't guaranteed from year to year unless you get it in writing. Asking those questions in advance and understanding what you're going to be on the hook for later on. So tell us what the experience was like graduating from Moyne and moving on to Syracuse.
It was a lot. I cried my graduation day. I cried very, very hard out of frustration and just happiness. So like a bittersweet moment, because so much was going to pile up on me. I felt it in my spirit. Things are going to get hard, but I knew in my gut that if I could handle being 4 years in a place that I didn't feel accepted, I could do anything in this world. There was nothing that could ever stop me from doing anything.
Confidence is such a huge thing. I love that. So what was the transition like, after senior year going to Syracuse?
Oh, it was completely easy. Moyne is like 5 minutes away from Syracuse University. It's a 5-minute drive. I ended up working over the summer again in Syracuse as a tutor counselor for visually impaired high school students.
So I'm assuming you had already been on the campus and checked things out.
Oh yeah, I had already been on the campus. It was easy.
Hanging out with Colette.
Not really so. Colette was starting her life. Her I couldn't really be up under her. But I felt pretty confident, and I had help. I had friends who were willing to drive me places and to help me move. My graduate experience was good outside of the classroom. I excelled academically in the classroom. I maintained A's. It's just so I came to understand that a lot of people that are for social justice are only like that when it's in the classroom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It'd be like that sometimes.
It'd be like that. And that's when I knew. I said, everyone who wants to make a change is not always trying to make a change for everybody, but wants to make a change because of how it'll make them look. As me, being a Black woman in a predominantly white woman dominated field, I knew that it just had to come to the point that when I walked in the room, I needed to command an audience.
Yeah, I think I understand what you're talking about in the sense of like, I think you have this kind of, people have good intentions to sort of help their personal demographic, but they're not necessarily for upliftment of all demographics. So if you're a white lesbian woman, for example, and I'm not trying to cast aspersions on all white lesbian women, but I know that that's something that's come up within the LG, BQ, I'm going to mess up the letters, but the community that, you'll have women that are like, oh, it's gay rights, but not necessarily gay Black rights, right? It's okay if there's upliftment and social development, but let's not talk about reparations, or let's not talk about something that doesn't particularly hit your demographic. And then, and then when it doesn't hit your demographic and you're on your own. Thanks very much.
Well, I can't comment too much on the LGBTQ.
No, but I mean, I'm imagining like, if you're a white woman or a white man, or
I don't know that much, but I do know from the people that I interacted with, and I can only say that from the people I interacted with, it was very much so. Yeah, you're here, and you can be you. Just don't be too much of you. Just like water it down a little bit. And you can't water me down. I'm a Bellini on a Sunday brunch. You can't water this down. It's like this 24/7. I'm unapologetically Black. And it took a minute for me to get like that. It's just unfortunate it took as long as it did.
Yeah, self-advocacy is a big thing. If you get a chance, definitely check out Toni Thomas. So she's class of '94, and she is a lawyer, and she wrote a children's book. But she talks about, and just in her experience, and it was sort of amazing because she sort of walked out of college, and she went to a historically Black college. And her confidence, like coming right out of college, especially because she is a generation before, was just sort of refreshing to hear, because you don't hear many stories like that. But having that confidence to self advocate and speak up for yourself and be confident in your shoes and ask for the opportunities is such a huge thing. I think white male privilege, especially, it just comes easy for that person to advocate for themselves. But when you're on the other end of that spectrum, which being a Black woman in the society, it puts you just on the statistics alone at the whole other end of it. And so advocating for yourself, asking for what you need isn't always easy, but being able to do that is so huge.
Yeah. And in the midst of all that, I was also getting ready for internships, because you had to do an internship in order to fulfill that credit. And I ended up going to Brown University over the summer for 10 weeks to serve as a resident director for the pre-college Summer at Brown program.
Oh, that's awesome.
It was great. It was good. I loved Rhode Island. I loved Rhode Island. And it's an interesting city, and I would hope to go back to visit again. And it taught me a lot about college politics.
Mm.
And I think that's for a whole nother conversation, because we don't have enough time. But it gave me a lot of insight of the bigger picture and how things really are, versus when you're just in the classroom and you're only learning content but not learning experience. And it was an eye opener. But after that, I knew, I'm gonna graduate and it's all gonna be good. We're gonna figure this thing out.
So you got your master's from Syracuse. How did you, as you were finishing up that program, what was on your mind as the real world, you sort of put the real world off a little bit, going to master's, going to graduate. What was your feeling as you were sort of approaching that, culmination of all your years of education at this point, and approaching the real world and time to get a job and all that good stuff?
I was ready. I was ready to make money. I knew I wanted to make me some money, and higher ed is very much so not appreciated based on the salaries that I've seen. And I knew if I went through all this school and acquired all these loans, I wanted to make me a little nice piece of change, which is what went into my idea of coming back to New York City to live and work. And how it turned out, I found the job that I have now on Facebook.
Oh, very cool. How did that? Yeah, tell us about that.
I got denied from my dream job. I wanted to go to this school very, very bad to work in a specific office, and they denied me. I had the on-campus interview. I flew down there to have the interview. I heard great reviews, but then I got the rejection, and I felt really.
Do you still want to work with them?
They're going through a little bit of a rough time, given everything that has happened. So I'm really glad that I'm not there now, based on how they took action. So I'm very glad I'm not there right now, but things can change. People can change within time. But I don't want to say what the school was, because I don't.
Yeah, no, I got you. Well, and I would say, as we get, towards the end of this, if there's an opportunity that you are looking for, let's put it out there, because I'm sure somebody in the alumni network has a contact, and we can definitely, we have thousands of alumni from Randolph, and a lot of our alumni are really in the world doing amazing things. So don't be surprised if there's a connection that's offered after this, because Randolph alumni are in perfect placement all over the place to help each other.
Well, thank you.
Absolutely. So tell us about this Facebook story, how you ended up getting your job.
Oh, of course. So I was in bed moping around because I didn't get the job, damn near crying. It was a mess. I was a mess. I was a wreck. And I remember I saw a job post pop up on Black higher ed professionals page that I was a part of. And it was with high school students and dealing with summer programs. And I was like, no, come on. And I remember I took it off my phone and I logged into Facebook the next day, and that post was the first thing that came up again. So I clicked on it and I read a bit about it. It was in New York City. It was dealing with students of color and in some sense, some form of pre-college, which is an experience I went through. And I thought it doesn't hurt to ask questions. So I ended up messaging the girl who was leaving that position and looking for someone to replace her. And bada boom, I got my resume ready. I sent it in. And I had an interview, and come the day before graduation, I had a job offer.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, it was a long journey, but it was very much so at the right time. It came at the right time. And that's why I say you can't compare your journey to someone else's, because everyone in my program was getting offers, like they were figuring out where they were going to be. Some people hadn't heard back from any jobs, and which is why I say comparison is the thief of joy. What's for you is already yours. You don't have to fight for it. You don't have to cry about it. It's going to come. And this is just so happened to be my journey.
I love that message, because, if you really put yourself out there, you obviously put in the work, and you do the applications, you put the legwork in, and you will, when you have value, which you have value. So many folks, I'm sort of preaching that message every day in terms of, you have value that you don't even know about. You got books in you that you haven't written. You got to just put it out there. So I love that piece of your message. So talk to us about what are things that you are looking to get into and that you want to do in the future, where alumni could potentially help you. And then, what are some things that you think, if somebody's looking for something that you might be able to offer them?
So I am very much so trying to get back into higher ed. Not this year, but I want to get more so in the conferences and get my name out there and get my, get my experiences out there with people who can connect me to people who can make things happen. So I want to do my job for at least another year and be successful at it. And then when I feel that it's best for me to move on, or when I feel like this job can serve me no longer, to give me more resources because I've taken everything, then I will move on properly to higher ed. I really want to be on a campus. I love working with students of color. It's one of my favorite things to do because every student comes with a journey. That's what I've appreciated so much about the job I have now. It's very easy to look at a high school student and assume what they're going through, but everyone comes from something so different. And that's what I love about what I do. And I am.
Let me add this before you get into like what you can help other folks with. Are there a couple of universities? I know there was that one spot that we don't want to talk about, but is there a couple other schools that you're sort of interested in? If there was somebody that had a contact out that you would love that connection to?
So I'm very much so interested in relocating and moving out of New York City, New York State in general, and more so the South or like the Southwest, mainly in that area. And
so are you talking about California?
And then like Southeast, such as, Atlanta.
Atlanta's a big spot. Cost of living's nice.
Right, that's what I heard. Charlotte, North Carolina. So, things of that nature. I don't really know schools yet, but I do know I want to work with students of color. So somewhere in the multicultural office or career advising is somewhere that
I would say, and this is a good advice for anybody. So you said career advising and what else?
Career advising or the office of like multicultural affairs or diversity.
Yeah, so I would definitely put it out. And actually, Daryl, who's somebody that I'm connected with, is not a bad person to connect with at Gettysburg because he's somebody that probably knows every person that does those roles across the country. So definitely a good person to connect with. But when you're on LinkedIn, when you're on Facebook, just to, every now and then put it out there like, hey, does anybody know somebody in this particular place? Or because when you say that specifically, I don't know a random person that might be able to help you, but when you say specifically, my brain goes, oh, yep, that I know that person that knows that person. Let me connect you with them, right? All right, so we'll work on that for you. And then what's some way where, like, what's somebody that you might be able to help in terms of, I don't know.
So looking into college access, I'm really good at scouting out programs for extracurricular activities that high school students want to participate in, such as like pre-college, internships, enrichment programs. I'm pretty good at that. I'm really great at advising, specifically first year students of color. I can work with first year students in general, but like I said, I do have experience with specifically students of color, and also want to talk about residence life. I'm all over the place, but that's the good thing about having all these internships and experiences and, work study opportunities. And I just am so blessed to have so much experience. And I have I've walked away with people from my high school, from my undergrad, from my graduate program. And I am just truly, truly blessed to have the resources that I've had and the network and connections that I've been able to build over the past few years. So big up to the grad school peoples, you know what I'm talking about. And, also my undergrad folks, and most importantly, my sisters in high school that have made, all of this possible with their great, great motivation.
All right. So do me a favor. I want you to have the last word. I really thank you so much for doing this, Toni. So I'm going to leave you with the last word and then just hang out once I throw up the logo after we finish. But if you can just say in parting, again, the message that you want folks to take away from this, and then you can say goodbye to everybody and we'll sign off.
The message is be kind, be nice, but be true to yourself. Don't compare, as I said before, because it's the thief of joy. What's meant for you will always be yours. Your journey has already been written. It's just time for you to find that road to get to your destination. That's the hard part. But once you do, everything will be smooth from there, and there will be hiccups. But that's what your experiences will prepare you for. That's it.
All right. Thank you very much. Thanks, Toni. We'll see you tomorrow.